One hand, certainly still watching those flood warnings and those rising water levels along the Missouri River, as there's still flood warnings in place for much of this week. And on the other hand, still watching for a lot of this heat. Short-lived heat wave that did produce some triple-digit heat across most of Nebraska. Got up to 100 degrees in Norfolk, 101 in Omaha. We did top out at 103 here in Lincoln. Also in Grand Island and Hebron, triple-digit heat through even much of the Panhandle in the higher elevation in the Sandhills. But for us here in Lincoln, topping out at 103, that matched records from back in the day, the 1900s, in fact. Initially set that record back in 1934, tied it in 1988, and now tied it again here this year in 2024. So very hot day yesterday, kind of a short-lived heat wave that still will encompass today. It was expected to peak yesterday, but still a hot day in store for us today before we see some welcome relief by Wednesday and especially Thursday. You can see some sunshine out there, some beautiful clouds kind of highlighted by some of that sunshine early this morning there in the distance. Maybe a few cumulus clouds kind of popping in and around Beatrice, South 6th and Perkins Street. Temperatures across the state widely variable, especially depending on who is able to kind of keep a hold of some of that moisture and humidity overnight, where we have seen some of that humidity. Still temperatures hanging around the middle and upper 70s to right around 80 degrees still in Omaha. But the Sandhills and those out in the Panhandle seeing some welcome relief with temperatures dropping into the lower 60s now into the 6 o'clock hour. Here's a look at that humidity across the state. Still lower 70s in Norfolk, O'Neill, in and around Omaha. Still see some upper 70s in northwest portions of Iowa, where they've been dealing with some devastating flooding. They may see some fog develop throughout this morning with some of those quiet conditions we have out there right now. But you also see the dew point continues to drop here in Lincoln this morning, so we may see temperatures drop off a little bit more before we are expecting another hot day. Upper 90s. This is above average by about 10 degrees. And we may be watching for an evening stronger storm too, but still some hot air through the upper levels of the atmosphere. So we'll talk about that potential here in a second. Heat advisory still in place across southeast Nebraska, including us here at home in Lancaster County. National Weather Service will have that go into effect by 1 o'clock this afternoon, last through the evening hours for heat index values that could be up to 108 degrees. Now here you see fairly quiet in terms of what satellite and radar have going on right now. Maybe a few sprinkles in northern Nebraska that have really kind of dissipated at this point, and some isolated thunderstorm development in southwest portions of Iowa, but really quiet here across the state, and expecting it to be a quiet morning and afternoon. There's a look at some of that patchy fog maybe developing in northeast Nebraska before that burns out. There will be a front dropping from north to south, but widely scattered strong storms expected along that front, maybe in northwest Nebraska, and especially watching this area in northeast Nebraska, as this initially could threaten some very large hail before these storms are kind of growing into a cluster, and this line may try to form back in here through the evening hours, coming for Lincoln around 8, 9, maybe even 10 o'clock as you see some of those storms nearby, but quickly should be moving out, and the severe threat with these will be dropping off by midnight. So there is a slight level 2 out of 5 risk for eastern Nebraska, indicating that there will be some scattered severe storms possible. Again, mainly watching for large hail initially that could be up to baseball size, at least especially for that area where that has black hash marks. Still watching for an isolated tornado threat too, especially as those storms continue south and east, and some damaging winds, certainly a possibility across eastern Nebraska as well. So again, still some question as to whether those storms can develop. I think we're leaning in a better direction than we were really for much of the day yesterday, as those storms initiate northeast Nebraska before there's a fairly quiet day on Wednesday, 90, before we're dropping even all the more still on Thursday, with some more cloud cover kind of keeping us in the lower 80s, and a welcome sight at that after we've been dealing with some triple digits so far this week.
All righty, sounds good. Thank you very much, Jessica.